I don't understand why they don't want
The little farm stuff, you know, that I always end up having to pay a budget.
Okay. You ready? Everybody ready? It's 9:32. We're 2 minutes late. Welcome to the April 16th, 2015 Downtown Design Review Committee meeting. If everyone would turn off their phones, I always do this to remind myself, or their pagers, if anybody has a pager anymore. Is that possible? First order of business is roll call.
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Gigi Faulkner. Present. Charles Ainsworth. Present. Ike Akinwande. Corey Bates. Present. Connie Scothorn. Richard Tannenbaum. You have a quorum.
Great. We have the approval of the minutes. If everyone has read them, I need a motion and a second.
Move to approve.
Gigi, the loud woman.
Hello.
Second.
And Chuck. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. We have no cases withdrawn. We have no cases continued. We have nothing on our consent docket. I have had a request to move item B up to the top of the docket. Do we have any problems with that? Okay. Item B, which is 2 Northwest 9th Street. Is the applicant present? You want to come forth to the podium and tell us your name, and then you write your name down on the little piece of paper.
My name is Dylan Bradway, and this is Chris Canale.
Hi. And we need to hang on for a second so the staff can talk about the comments on this, and then we'll have you introduce your project.
This is a request for, I'm Laura Griggs, by the way. I met most of you at the last meeting. This is a request for a mural on Northwest 9th Street. If you've been by there lately, there's a lot going on that street. This is a building that's adjacent to the railroad, and this would be on the parking lot side, take up the whole side of the building. It has been to the Arts Commission, so it has followed the procedure it needs to. And if you have any questions, we are recommending approval.
Okay. Dylan, would you like to describe your mural or anything?
We had, this was a response to an RFP put out by Downtown Oklahoma City, Inc. and Mason Realty to fulfill a mural project on the side of a kind of a dilapidating building in the area that needed a little bit of uplifting, attention drawn to it, something to make the area a little bit more lively. And in the RFP, they requested 3 artists collaborate on this wall, this project together. And in response to that, myself, as well as Chris Canale and Yadika Fields Star, which is another Oklahoma-based artist, put together the concept of the braid, which braids together 3 unique styles of artists, 3 unique styles and artists to create one body of work. And in that, it, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So what we did was they didn't really have any theme for the RFP, but we developed a theme which is basically celebrating the diversity of Oklahoma City. So we tried to divide the wall up into thirds since we had 3 artists. But what we found was a really neat idea was to braid our individual styles and individual ideas together, which symbolizes the diverse communities here in Oklahoma City that live amongst together and you know, cohabitate a city and all of that. So to celebrate the diversity, we braided together the ideas, and that's what we hope people will get out of this. We also didn't have a theme, so we let our imaginations run wild. So we also see it as a great representation of imagination and creativity. So.
Okay, great. Any questions from the committee? Does DOKC have any comments about this?
Hi, AJ Kirkpatrick, Downtown Oklahoma City Incorporated, 428 Northwest 26th Street. This was a new pilot program that we were trying with our 501c3 wing, which is called Downtown Oklahoma City Initiatives, which is a separate 501c3 that we created in 2007 to help do things like this and improve downtown. So this was a partnership with us and Mason Realty. We ran the process. We wanted to make sure that we were getting good submissions and that it wasn't just you know, building owner picking an artist that they happen to know. We got 12 submissions, and we allowed artists to either propose to do a third of the wall or for a team of 3 artists to do the entire wall. The only real rule we gave them was that we wanted something that showed collaboration, and we felt like this was the best submission, not only in terms of the quality of the art, but also that it really got to the issue of collaboration and the way that the differing styles are intertwined throughout the entire piece.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this from the gallery? Can you come forward and state your name and write your name on the little piece of paper in front of you?
I'm Kim Mason. I own 11 Northwest 8th. My question is the mural going to cover that whole side of that building or just part of it? Because there's a bunch of windows there.
Yes, it will fill the.
You want to come to the mic? Either one of you. It doesn't.
It will fill the entire wall. They're actually covering the windows right now completely, so it will actually cover the entire wall.
Oh, so the windows will be covered.
Yes, similar to the white. If you go to the last slide.
Oh, not this one? Okay.
Oh.
Sorry. Go back to that one. This one? Is that the one you wanted?
The elevation, how the white windows, those already have a covering on them, a metal sheet that covers those windows. And they're actually doing that to the other 2 windows as well.
Okay. Kim, do you have any comments about that?
Well, I guess it's been my understanding that that building to Northwest 9th is in such bad shape that it should be demolished, and that if the mural is worth $48,000 retail and the net assessed value of that building is only $50,000, why we're putting something on a building like that, I guess.
Good question.
Well, I expected our property owner to be here, so I can't really speak much to the future of the building. He has indicated to us in those discussions that he does not expect to have this building for much longer, that he would eventually propose demolition of it, but that is yet to be determined when that would happen. So I think we went into this knowing that this piece would not be a long-term piece, and I think we made that clear to the artist.
So there's usually a lifespan to murals also. I don't know if that makes any difference. Anyway.
If we could speak to the lifespan, the type of paint that we're using, the manufacturer, you know, gives it about a 5-year guarantee as far as coloring, not fading, and stuff like that. So if the building gets demoed, in 5 years, so be it. We understand that.
Okay, got it. Did the Arts Commission say anything about the lifespan, or if this increases the value of the building or anything like that?
The murals, it's my understanding that for Arts Commission, murals are assumed to have a lifespan of about 7 years.
Okay.
And then for their own purposes, I don't exactly know what they are, they do kind of assess a value just to know what it is. And I want to say it's something like $30 a square foot. That could be completely wrong.
Okay.
But that does, I think, add up to the $48,000. But that's just kind of a placeholder. I mean, it's not insured. It's that's just a kind of a
Okay.
working number. But about 7 years, because we have such crazy weather that it's just not going to last very, very long.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Any other questions from the gallery? Do we have a motion? I only have to look this way.
Looks like we're going to sleep up here when we jump
We
on
really
this.
are not asleep.
Let me see here. I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, that was a Ainsworth Bates motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Your project is approved. Thanks for being here. The next item, going to skip back to item A, 400 North Walnut. Is the applicant present? Hello, David. Would you like to state your name and sign in?
I would.
And in the
David Box.
meantime, staff, do you want to address this?
Madam Chairman, I have potential, this is not working.
Very loud. You want to recuse yourself?
I do. I'll abstain. I have potential unrelated business with the applicant, and so I wish to just abstain and not participate in the conversation.
Okay.
No. You're the driver. I'm not a good driver.
Not a good driver, okay.
Okay. Oh. Would you like to talk about the project? You. Or is Lisa talking about the project?
Sorry, yes, I would.
Lisa.
Yes, this is, you saw this project last month. The main comments from the last meeting were the obscuring of the historic west facade and the number of different exterior materials. The applicant has submitted somewhat revised drawings. The building is essentially the same. Two main items they changed to address your comments were they are committing to maintaining the historic columns and stone accents on the interior of the building inside the lobby to truly just encapsulate them as opposed to removing them. And they have removed the blue metal decorative screens that were on the south side and replaced those with glass balcony and rail that kind of makes them less visually obtrusive. But in terms of height, massing, and program and site design, this is essentially the same building you saw last time.
I noted that. Do you want to talk about it?
Yes. I'll tell you why it's a good thing that it's the same building you saw last time. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Martin Goldstein, who will talk to you about some of the details of the design, and also Tim Johnson, who's going to talk to you about the development and also some of the setback. I understand that previously setback of this building was a concern, so we have created some renderings to explain why the setback at issue is appropriate and consistent with other developments along this stretch. I have the opportunity to appear before you today on a project that I think is exciting and on a project that I think hits what the guidelines are intended to do and what this committee has struggled with over the years. That being, most times developers are here, a lot of times I'm here on behalf of them, seeking to demolish entire buildings. And here we have a unique and great opportunity where a developer, not for the cheapest cost, because the cheapest cost would have been having me up here explaining why we need to demolish the whole building, but instead has decided to retain almost the entire building and make this a unique, brand new project while keeping that historic fabric of the building. And it's something that I think is consistent with the guidelines. I think it's something that this committee has asked developers to do, and you have an opportunity here to do it. Now, I do understand last time one of the concerns was the front of the building with the columns were proposed to be removed. So what we have done is we have incorporated those, and Martin will tell you about that, but we are going to retain them. They'll be on the inside of the building, but it'll be a neat aspect for those folks that will be inside the building. When you look at what is being retained, it's almost 98% of the building as it sits now. So I think it is an unbelievable job. I think the developer should be commended for that. It's something you don't see every day. I do want to talk about the guidelines, and I think it's important that we focus on one element of it. And it's in your staff report. It begins on page 4 and goes over to page 5. And it's, in order to preserve the legacy of our past, structures and sites within the downtown districts that are significant to the history of the nation, state, city, or district should be rehabilitated so that as much of the original fabric as possible remains intact. We think we've done that. We think we have saved almost the entire building. Certainly we have retained as much as possible to make this development work. And I believe that's why staff has recommended approval, because we do meet those guidelines and we do meet that charge to remain or keep as much of the building as we can. One of the other issues that got brought up was the number of materials. And staff notes that there are 10 different types of materials. I would disagree with that. I think what you have is basically 2 main types. You've got stone, and then you have some concrete-based materials. And Martin will explain that in detail. But I do think to say that we have 10 separate materials is a bit misleading. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We would ask you to approve this application and allow this great development to go forward. I'm going to turn it over to Martin, unless there are any questions of me at this time.
Any? Nope. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning. My apologies for being unable to attend the meeting last month to discuss the design. I think it probably would have helped the conversation had it been there. So I apologize for being unable to attend, but kind of wanted to back up and start at the beginning of the project. This one's okay. Thank you. So just kind of building on what David had said, if bottom line was really the main driver for the project, we wouldn't have gone this route. We really could have built on almost the entire footprint per the zoning code as we understood it, and could have gone taller, but that kind of went against the grain of what it is we're trying to do. I'm chairman of the Historic Preservation Design Review Committee in the City and County of Denver, and designed a couple of projects here in Bricktown. Our goal with projects like these, and in order for our firm to sign up to be a part of them, we really need to do something better than that. What we were trying to do here is kind of honor the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for preservation and preserve as much of the fabric as possible, and I'll show that to you in just a second. But the difficult part for you all, and where the rubber meets the road on projects like these, is how much fabric to preserve and what's right for the new fabric. The Secretary of Interior talks about projects like this by asking that the new fabric be of its own time, but contextually relevant. So how do you learn from the existing neighborhood and project and try and interpret that into a modern design that isn't trying to replicate history falsely? So we took really all of the existing details and we're preserving them. So we've got windowsills that are really unique. They slope at multiple angles. They engage the brick in a really special way. We've got brick details that, for me, are very obvious. I don't know if they are for everyone else, but I think they contribute to the value of the project. you end up with a whole host of parapet details and cornice details. Across the entire building, we're keeping all of them. And by that, I mean we're actually not removing it. We're keeping all the fabric that's there now, and we're going to preserve it and protect it and make sure that it shines when we're finished. We're also keeping all of the openings that are currently present. So the windows that are there are all being kept. The only alteration is to one window where we're turning it into a balcony. And at one end where this new stair and accessible egress comes to the building, there's actually going to be a new opening right here. There's currently an opening right here. So we're keeping all of the existing openings on the entire project, all four sides. In addition, there's a clear story that runs across the roof that's not highly visible unless you're in one of the higher properties across the street. But we're keeping the entire clear story intact, and we're either going to preserve the existing windows or replace them with something that would be appropriate for a project like this. So we're really trying to find that balance between the existing and the new. And I think where the rubber met the road in some ways last time was the entry. And where we started internally was it was the only fabric we were talking about removing that was of any substance. So the impetus for us was that what is transformed into a basement by way of the entry is really a first floor. And that's why Tim brought this section last time and why we brought it again this time. So for egress purposes and with the constraints of the project, we really wanted to enter on what is effectively and objectively the first floor. And apparently, you know, we had gone a little far, so we understand that. And we've revised the design, and I think you captured it really well, so that the existing, there's two colonnades and two columns, and they're all going to remain. And two of them will be highly visible. This colonnade, when you walk into this space, is a two-story atrium space. So you'll walk in from the street corner, open the door, and look up and see a two-story volume, and there will be the existing fabric. It'll be evident and visible. And similarly, anyone who goes onto the second floor is going to experience this column where in the middle of an 8-foot opening, it's right in the center, which was kind of serendipitous, to be honest. We hadn't planned it that way, but it worked out quite nicely. So now you have this architectural object that speaks of the history of the building. It's highly prevalent or obvious for anyone that's going to use the second story, which will be limited access, but it'll be highly visible. And if we can expose the one in the other column in the corner, we'll do that as well. There's a colonnade in the end that's kind of in the way of the elevator that we're putting in for accessibility, and that colonnade will be protected. And what I mean by that is we'll make sure that the way we build around it will protect not just the original colonnade item, but the brick around it. We didn't want to tell you we're going to preserve it, but then blast a whole bunch of holes into the brick so that in the future, if somebody wants to reverse our design and re-expose these elements, they find that there's other damage adjacent to it. So we're going to go ahead and protect everything around that component as well. So in the future, I mean, this building's been here a long time. Should we go away and they laugh at Venture Architecture and say, what were they thinking? They can pull all of that away and we'll be able to see all this here the way it is right now. So we think we've responded pretty well to that. The next item, which was really the easiest topic, was the balconies. And I think on all fronts we were pushing the art of the design, and I think the ownership team was actually happy that we're changing this. So we went ahead and changed this, we changed this to something that we thought was more in keeping with the context of the rest of our design. It's a simplified balcony that kind of is intended to go away as opposed to being a feature. The last item, I guess I can use this board too, that I think that my firm confused for everyone is the materiality. And so what we've always intended was to have two primary materials. Unfortunately, we've had a large academic debate about what those materials should be, from the context conversation that we would see the Secretary of Interior wanting us to have on a preservation basis, and similarly from a function standpoint, because we have really intense weather. We all know that. So where we landed was two materials, and I can pass them around. The small square sample is a cultured stone product. It was picked to match the existing banding on the existing building. And the idea is that the primary material of the addition is kind of respecting the accent, and our addition becomes a larger accent. So we're using a stone that we feel is almost exactly matching the color, but reinterpreting a modern use of that color and of that texture. The secondary material, I think, was the harder material to explain and where more of the issue came about. We had played with multiple options, some kind of an impregnated wood that would last a long time, some kind of hardy product. In the end, what we picked and what's going around is a product by a company called OcoSkin. It's a cementitious product that offers slats as their primary use. The slats approximate the look of wood, but because it's cementitious, it's completely bulletproof. I mean, it should last for any weather that we're going to have here. So in the end, we have two primary materials. There are two colors of the material, because when we went with one color on the OcoSkin, it really didn't look like it had enough action. And part of the reason for that is that if you really look at brick, and we say it's red, it's not really red. It's purple and orange and all kinds of colors represented at the same time. So we felt like in order to respect an interpretation of the existing brick material, we would go with essentially a two-tone OcoSkin. So there's a couple of smiley face stickers there for the two colors we're currently entertaining. The lighter being kind of the accent gray, and then the primary OcoSkin product would be kind of that kind of honey-colored
So
brown.
can you go over that again?
You bet.
You've got the, what you just passed around in two different colors.
Correct.
And those are being shown.
Item number 2 on sheet A 5.02. In either drawing, it's item number 2, and you can kind
Okay.
of see here to the left. So it's
So
two
that's
colors.
got multiple colors
Correct.
within the thing. And then item number 3 is what?
Is cultured stone.
It's cultured stone.
So we caused this confusion, frankly, because we had debated multiple products for each of those, and we were trying to hit that middle bandwidth between functionality and aesthetics, and at this point we're less concerned with cost than we are with doing the right thing, because it's not really a very cost-effective product. But it is a long-term, it's one of the best products we can use long-term, because it's cementitious, and from a maintenance standpoint, it's not going to have any wear.
And the places that you have, I'll just go through the materials
You
just
bet.
so we're very clear on that. You've got board form concrete, and where would those, is that just in the signage or?
Yeah, it's just the sign here. And honestly, if that's a concern, we're happy to change that.
And you've got that on the
The corner sign.
dumpster enclosure as well?
That might be right. Okay, I'm being told that's right. I mean, the additional materials we're trying to call it as accents are pretty standard. We just call them out to be maybe overly thorough, but like item number 9 is just calling out the aluminum flashing. We'll have that with any product. I mean, honestly, if we did brick, it would still have the same flashing.
And what about item number 10? Is that some kind of screening for the rail around the
Correct.
the
That's the
balconies?
screen. Correct.
And the
And-
material under that is?
It's going to be just a steel balcony at this point with kind of a concrete pan, and then we've been debating whether it's aluminum or aluminum-colored screening.
But the little jut outs for the first floor, those are made out of what? No, down, over, yeah, there, down, underneath the balconies, yeah.
So it'll be of the same material. It would presumably be steel painted, aluminum color, or aluminum. If we can afford aluminum, we'd pick aluminum.
But the structure that becomes a jut out, is that also steel?
Well, the actual floor of it will be concrete.
Well, down below that, on the
This
first
item
floor.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah, it'll be part of the screen design.
okay, so, sorry, I just thought, yeah, on the floor plan, it shows it actually a structure extending out on the first floor.
Yeah, there'll be a structure to hold the screen and the edge of the balcony, and we'll
Looks like
kind
it's part of the office space on the first floor.
the expansion part.
Yeah,
That might be right. But it would still be the same materials. It would just have glass as opposed to the screen by itself.
okay, so that's not the concrete, the board form concrete?
The concrete will be for the top, so that what we walk on the balcony, the upper floor is a balcony.
And the
Okay.
canopy of the balconies, is that steel, painted steel?
I'm sorry?
The canopies that are on the balconies?
Yeah, it'll all be the same material. I mean, there'll probably be some steel for structure, but if we can kind of turn it into an aluminum structure, especially the screen, it'll be aluminum. And if not, it'll be steel painted with primer, and it'll end up being a silver color that approximates aluminum.
And the canopy itself?
The canopy around the first floor?
No, the canopy of the balcony, yeah.
It'll all be the same material. I mean, we'll have flashing and concrete for the floor, and we'll have flashing and insulation above where it's appropriate, but it'll all be either steel or painted aluminum or aluminum itself. Any other questions for me? That's kind of the gist of it. I think we wanted to talk about materials and kind of our goals of the project, and particularly the amount we're preserving, which is nearly the entire existing fabric of the skin and the roof.
Yeah, one more thing. Where you have the signage for the 400 walnut, you said it's going to be board-formed concrete, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking at the rendering. That color, is that a good approximation of what that color is going to look like?
I think so, and some of the idea was kind of taking what we have as our standard in the canal area, so we've kind of got that along where the mural is on the Devon end, and just trying to take a small piece of that and bring it here, kind of bring Bricktown a little further away. But if that's a problem, we're happy to change that too.
Icon on sheet A506 is an enlarged rendering showing the sign, and it indicates more, I think, the color and texture that's proposed. A506.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Brandstetter. Hi, Tim Johnson, Johnson Associates. I'll just briefly address the question that came up last time, was questioning the setbacks of the buildings, and you have this exhibit. I know it's hard for you to see from there, but you have this exhibit in your packet. What we did was we went out and physically measured everything that's coming up and down Walnut. The school building, the yellow school building on the corner, is at a standard setback of about 25 feet. Our building is immediately south of that. It's an additional 10 feet further back, so it's 35 feet. Said that backwards. It's 15 feet and 25 feet, approximately.
Oh, the drawing that was put on our,
That one there?
yeah, the drawing that was
Yes.
put here is not showing the building to the north of it. If you guys brought one that you printed out, it would be more thorough. It would be exactly what Tim is showing there.
So, and continuing down the east side, there's a vacant lot that will ultimately be developed, and presuming that it would move out and be right on the property line.
But we currently do not have, is this correct? We do not have an application for
That's
that?
correct.
So we haven't approved a building that would be at that
I understand.
setback?
But
Okay.
thinking practically, just like on the west side, all these buildings are on the property line or beyond. Aloft is overhanging. And as you go south, the converted church, that's the law firm, it's the same setback as the school building. But as you have been by there, they have the keystone retaining wall that's about 4 to 4.5 feet high at the property line, creating kind of a barrier along the back of the sidewalk. And then further south, where the original Deep Deuce apartments were built, they're built on the property line. And as I mentioned, Aloft hangs over the property line, and the level is built on the property line. The new project to the north is being built on the property line. So just by example, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Thanks for bringing that. Is that all you want to talk about? No, I just thought you had more you wanted to visit about.
we'd be happy to answer any questions. We would ask for your approval.
I just feel compelled to say this. I'm kind of amazed. I'm amazed that, one, that the building got a recommendation of approval, because as far as I can see, the only thing that really meets our ordinance is the fact that it approaches the street within the 10 feet of the property line. That we want to have windows on the street, and this particular project provides nothing, no indication of what's going on in that building, no view of any activity, no interaction with the sidewalk, other than there's a front door there. It also, I can't really call this a historic preservation project. It covers up the most significant features in the building. The fact that you put it on the inside of the building does not do that. I mean, it doesn't. We don't address the inside of the building for the most part. I just don't feel like it's a historic preservation project. I don't feel like it really addresses the crux of why we want a building close to the street, and that's to engage with the pedestrians. I have some real issues with it, and I just wanted to open up with that.
I guess respectfully, we're seeing it a little bit differently. We can open up and bring more windows, but then we're removing more fabric. And we've left the entire entry intact, so it's reversible, which is really, in the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, the primary way they deal with these kinds of conflicts. We're dealing with a second floor entry that just doesn't meet modern life. We've got access issues, ADA issues, and we've got footprint issues. So we came up with a design that we actually think is quite engaging with an open plaza space. We've got all the glass into the two-story, it's really a three-story atrium, but two-story connected atrium. We tried to minimize how much light came into the stair for a whole host of code reasons, with glass being in a fire stair. But, I mean, this entire facade has all the same windows and all the same detail on its primary face, and it does on the other four sides as well. So we did have a conflict on the front, but we came, I respect that the purview of the committee isn't to see the interior, but we're committing to displaying it on the interior and to making sure that it's reversible, which is really a key component in preservation for projects like these.
I share the same concern with the west facade. I think as an architectural element, I think, one, it's the most significant architectural element on the building. You know, the south facade aside, I think from a preservation standpoint, the west really is where the focus of preservation needed to occur. And as an entry portico to the building, the significance of that architectural element occurs in its full expression of the full portico. And the way that the development's being approached right now dices up that portico. There's pieces of it outside, there's pieces of it inside. Where the new development is hitting the portico, really destroys the overall expression of the portico itself. There's a small portion on the north side of the wall that shows the corner of the portico. As an element, I would argue that it's not being retained in its architectural expression of an entrance portico.
Yeah, I mean, if ultimately the committee says that this whole project has to go through the existing 4 columns or 2 columns in colonnade on the second story, then we'll have to obviously address that. I think that we end up with products like these that are installed that just aren't really congruent. So we're offering to take this project, which really started off as kind of how do we protect what's there and not tear down what's there. And we've come at this with that whole approach from the beginning. So, I mean, we have all of these details on all the sides that we're preserving, and we're talking about 2 columns and 2 colonnades that we fully respect are important. And I think our approach to how we build around them is important. But in the end, they're really not congruent to accessing the space. We've got 2 different uses going on inside the building. And so we've kind of come with a modern statement that at the same time allows for this to be reversed in the future. So, you know, in the end, I certainly couldn't change your opinion. Some of this is kind of like, which flavors do you prefer? But we're looking at it as it's a reversible item. It's critical to the success of the project, and it's kind of important because the product ended up keeping all of the existing fabric, the footprint, the floor plates, the skin on all 4 sides. We ended up with a smaller project, and for viability's sake, this is one of the things we really need to make it work.
And I think that's the point, and that's what the guidelines allow. And that's why when the guidelines talk about keeping as much as possible, we've done that. When you're keeping 98% of a building, that's a lot more than most developers are coming up to this committee with. And so, unfortunately, the way that the front is designed currently, in order to make this project work, it requires us to do what we're doing. But that is preserving the building.
Can I chime in just a second here? I'm a developer. I'm not an architect. But I do agree with both of the comments about the facade. And I've done many of these buildings, and I know the challenges that are involved in them. But it seems to me that an idea might be, if you're taking the grade down to the basement level now would be first floor level, that there would be an opportunity there to use that as an entry and still maintain the current facade above that. And from a function standpoint, it looks to me like what you're trying to do is get a fire stair in, or a stair. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
I said from a function standpoint, you're trying to put a stair in, right? Is there no other opportunity or any place else you could, you know, I'm all about putting stairs on the outboard of buildings and preserving the leasable square feet and that sort of thing. So I just got to believe there's some design, you know, you guys are talented, that you could come up with something that could really enhance and make this building work better. You know, the walls, you know, the sidewalls of a lot of these buildings, I mean, I've been through this with the National Park Service, and some of those are considered non-historic walls, so preserving them, you know, is kind of like this. But I do think that front's really important, and I do think there's a way that you could do that, make your project viable, and preserve that element of the building. I mean, a lot of these old buildings are square boxes of brick, and they've got one signature corner or entry or whatever, and that's it. And that's what identifies and I think signifies the importance of that particular building. So I'd like to see you figure this deal out. I applaud what you're doing.
Thank you.
I understand the juxtaposition of the old and the new, and I think that's great. I just think you ought to work on that front facade.
So let me walk through just for a second the path of travel for egress for a minute. What we're trying to do is leave windows on the outside so we have as many functional and viewable windows as possible. If we enter on the first floor, we end up with this feature, this entablature being floating on the second floor. So that's problem number 1. So when we begin to build out that first floor, then you end up with a situation where we can conceivably build a lobby on the first floor, but in order for those stairs to not go back outside, you have the entablature. If you're going to build a first floor lobby that's enclosed, you need to have it enclosed above because the stairs go all 3 stories. So we're going to end up with a functional problem where you're going to go outside on the second floor and back inside for the first floor, unless we build an enclosure in front of the existing facade, which we've done.
Well, there's plenty of precedents of entering and exiting the building on different floors, on different sides of the building. You know, you talked about the east side of the site. I think the south side of the site's available. I mean, you've maintained 90% of the existing building, but it's 10% that really is the most significant part of the building that is getting lost.
And And the deal with that building is it was the Board of Education. So it was the first location for the Board of Education. And that facade was designed to look like a building for the Board of Education in 1919. So you lose that entirely when you just wipe that out. And the grand stairway also would allow for your exiting from that second floor.
But if we put that grand stairway in front, it's going to have to be enclosed, so we're going to have the same conversation anyway.
Why would it have to be enclosed?
Unless we want to have elevators and interior stairs that are out exterior. That's where we end up with this conversation. If we want the stairs to be enclosed, we need to have them in that location. So we're going to have this conversation in either case. This is the most minimal impact of the footprint that we can come up with for a stair. And we're still going to experience these key components, but we really can't change the egress. The entire building runs longitudinally from east to west. So we end up exiting on the east side and the west side. And because it's on the second story, this is the solution that when we research it that we find, where we build a new enclosure on the front of it and try to respect what's there so that it's reversible. And so in the end, we've got this 2-story, 3-story solution that needs to be there whether it's modern or not.
I think what I'm hearing from my other, and Connie and Ike may want to chime in here and prove me wrong, but what I'm hearing is that we'd like to see you maintain that front facade and relocate the fire stair, if you want to put a fire stair in there, to one of the other facades. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this?
And in response, it's not feasible for this project. The guidelines don't require it. We think we have done everything we can to respect the building, to respect the historic elements of the building, and we are squarely within the guidelines. And that's why your staff has recommended approval. And when a project meets the guidelines and still maintains 98% of historic building, we think that's something that this committee should approve. We would ask for your approval.
I would actually argue that it doesn't meet the guidelines in retaining its most architectural significant feature.
Well, and I'm not sure that there's something in the guidelines that specifies the certain elements of an architectural feature must be preserved. What the guidelines say is that as much of the original fabric as possible remains intact. And additionally, when we look through the guidelines, this section discusses preserving buildings that are significant to the history of the nation, state, and city. I don't think there's been a finding that this building is that such, but again, your professional staff has advised, and we agree that this is squarely within the guidelines.
I would maintain that west facade as a character-defining architectural feature.
And it'll be retained.
It will not be retained to the public realm. It will not be maintained in its holistic expression as an architectural element. It will be dissected and concealed, and I would argue not retained.
Connie or Mike, do you want to add anything to this?
Sorry, I'm stuck. I'll just say that I agree with Corey, and I mean, I think this building, I mean, I'm not an architect, is the most creative thing I've seen come through. I mean, I didn't recognize the building when I drove by it. But on the other hand, I think that's what's wrong with it also, is that I didn't recognize where the original building was in the plan when I drove by the existing building. I would like to see some kind of, I mean, it's very confusing. I'll stop with that.
Yeah, and I do agree with the sentiments of my fellow committee members. One of the things that sticks out to me, though, is precisely what Corey pointed out, in that I think that front facade on the west facade is a character-defining architectural feature. And I think that concealing it doesn't help with recognizing what this actual structure means to the history of the site and to the history of the state. And so I'll just leave my comments there, though.
And here's my comment to that, and I'm not an architect. So when I read the guidelines, I read it from a legal point of view. And what it says is, retain those things in the original location, which we have done. So we have squarely met these guidelines.
Another element of the guideline that this does not meet at all is the percentage of glass on the first floor. And it's just not, Lisa? Yeah, I'm listening. Can you, but am I wrong? Don't we have a requirement to have glass on the first floor?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at sheet A501, west elevation. Yeah, 50% of the first floor is supposed to be transparent, and there shouldn't be more than 20 feet between change of module or other elements. So
that's a bit confusing when we're discussing preserving the building, but we don't have enough glass.
Well, this is, if you're going to do a new building, we expect to see 50%. Is that right? Am I quoting that? We expect to see 50% of the first floor be glass. This is what I was talking about with interacting with the pedestrian realm. And you've got in the new materials that you're providing in this building, there's very, very little glass.
The way I see this is
on the west facade, on the first floor.
I believe that's opened up, but this is not a new building. This
is a new part of this building that you're pushing up to be next to the sidewalk.
Correct. And it's the only way we can not come before you with a demo permit and a totally new build-up.
But that's part of the ordinance. That's part of what our charge is to help engage the pedestrian, engage the city with those buildings.
And I believe we've done that, and I believe that your staff was correct in saying that we're within the guidelines.
Okay. Anybody else? Do we have a motion? Any way you would be interested in kind of working on it and coming back, or?
No. We think what we have is a great opportunity for this city, one that meets every guideline that this district has, and we would ask for your approval.
Got a motion?
I would motion to deny the application on the basis that it doesn't comply with the downtown design district zoning ordinance and guidelines.
I will second that motion.
Okay.
For purpose of the record, could we have you specify which elements of the ordinance you believe that are not in compliance?
Reference section 7200.1.g, existing historic resources.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, which would be to deny the project?
Can we have one more clarification?
Okay.
You had asked staff about the window issue, and I'd ask Ms. Chronister to chime in on that.
yeah, that is, I would admit that might be something we did not scrutinize as well as we might have. Let me look it up. Okay, when the ground floor use of a building has a non-residential use, which is office, and abuts a public street, which is the west and the south facades, at least 50% of the building wall should, it's a guideline, should consist of clear or tinted windows and or doors and or display windows set into the building wall. So that's 7200.1.G. Point 3, point C.
And in order to do that, my architect tells me it would require structural modifications to the project. So I think that's...
This is not to the existing. This is to anything you add to the building toward
Right.
the street.
Right, it would require a rework of the structure that's proposed. And so that's why the guidelines say should. Are we talking about, I think just this one little sliver right here?
I'm talking about anything you add to the building.
They're just talking about the west facade. It's just this, says it's just this little sliver. We can make it 50%. So we're not out of compliance with that one. We can make it 50%.
Well, that is one of the basis for, well, my basis for denying it. I don't know if Corey agrees with that.
I would include that stipulation in my motion to deny the application.
What I'm saying is we will meet that 50% threshold. And we can
Well,
work.
would you like to work on it and come back?
Well, it appears that the 50% issue is not the real issue. And so I don't know, I think we're wasting everybody's time. If we come back with 50%, but it looks the same.
Well, but that's how the design is right now. And if you'd like to come back and show us something different. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Anybody opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is the downtown.
We need to have that a second motion to that amendment.
Okay.
Did anybody second his amended? Okay.
I second.
Thank
Then
you,
I'll
Paula.
Vote again.
Oh, all in favor for the amended motion? Any opposed? Okay. The next item of business is Oklahoma City Development Framework. Are you going over that, Lisa?
Yes, and Ian Colgan, our Assistant Director for Planning, is here. A lot of you were at the workshop we held in February to talk about the Downtown Development Framework that Ian's been working on, and it was included in your packets. The framework is trying to tie together a lot of past studies and to really illustrate how the transit network and land use kind of come together in one package. This document in and of itself, it's a developer's guide to assist developers in what the city sees for various portions of downtown. Once this is adopted by Planning Commission and Council, then we will work to update the ordinance to match certain pieces of it. Items like height and lot coverage are covered in here, entrance locations, limits on blank walls, facade transparency, a lot of which are already in your ordinance, but they'll potentially be tweaked. So we are asking the committee to recommend this to Planning Commission. I'm trying to clarify that this document doesn't automatically change anything in your ordinance, but we'll be working through those ordinance amendments in the year ahead. And Ian is here to answer any specific questions.
Hi, Ian.
Good morning. Happy to answer any questions you have about the framework.
Are we working toward a form-based code type of thing? And does this help with that at all?
I think it is accurate to say that the framework reflects ideas in form-based code that basically is intended to enhance what we have in standards to be a version of that. It really focuses, like form-based projects do, on just the location of a building, its scale and massing. It doesn't really touch architectural details or things like that, but it really focuses on how a building addresses the street, how it addresses its context, and then what's that appropriate context within the district it's within. So I think there's a lot of those components that are part of the framework.
Cool. Any other questions for Ian? I think this is exciting.
As a developer, I mean, you know, we're kind of slow, and pictures and the way this thing's laid out really helps. You know? I mean, I think it really, you know, I like to, it helps. I think it's well done. I think we're on the right track.
Thank you. It took me 7 years as a consultant and writing way too many words that no one read to get to this point of being very visual, but so I appreciate it.
I applaud the effort as well. I think it's comprehensive, and it's just laying the groundwork for moving in the right direction.
The visuals are great. Very, very good.
Now, do we need to do anything with this?
Yes, somebody needs to motion recommend approval to the Planning Commission.
I move to recommend approval to the Planning Commission.
Ike and Gigi, all in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you. I appreciate your recommendation, and I look forward to moving this forward for adoption and all the implementation that is part of it.
Okay. Thanks, Ian. Okay. We have communications. Any big items on the administrative approval?
No, just, no. Thunder banners, which unfortunately will be short-lived.
Not used this year, sorry.
We're also reporting out some recent actions from Board of Adjustment that relate to cases this committee has heard. A date has not been set on the bus station appeal to district court. The Myriad Gardens ice house fence was approved. The item B3 is Civic Center Flats, and the Board of Adjustment did approve the fence, variance to the fence height, but not the parking lot paving.
Which was the gravel?
The gravel, which they have approved before, but this time they said that the burden of proof for hardship was not met, that it was a want to, not a have to.
Was there a resolution on what that would then be?
On
for the paving?
They'll have to come back and amend their CA with asphalt, presumably, asphalt or concrete, yeah.
So they haven't, do we have a new Board of Adjustment or something, or?
Nope.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, the applicant you can watch the meeting video, the applicant referred to previous cases, but they stood firm in that cases are evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and that approvals on previous projects do not, should not be taken as an assumption that will be approved.
Huh. Okay. Anything else?
Planning Commission, we're still working on taking what we've been calling the demolition ordinance. That's still actively going through the Planning Commission process. It should be set for introduction in the next couple of weeks. And then item D, I wanted to point out in case anybody drove by and wondered why we never heard about that. The fence at the basketball court at Emerson School was approved on the condition of a variance, but according to Development Services, it does not need a variance because they can interpret it as a structure, not a fence. So it's been approved in terms of they got their permit, and we affirmed it met visually what was approved. But again, I wanted to specifically inform you guys of that one.
Okay. Any comments from the committee members? This was a tough one. I mean, it was an interesting building to me, but it was, I think, thank you guys for sticking to your guns. And it's inevitably going to go to the Board of Adjustment. They probably already made an application.
It is, and I think this illustrates, I mean, applicants frequently say, well, staff recommended. I'm like, but it is not staff's decision, and on some of these more difficult projects, you do need all of the minds to look at it and assess it.
I don't think we should talk about it again.
Huh?
We don't need to be talking about that case.
Okay.
again.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Susan
we
would
need
like
to,
us to
that
stop.
case, we don't need to be discussing that case.
Desist.
Already on.
Anyway, I think maybe all of us were in that. We were talking too much in class when we were in grade school or whatever. Anything else? Any birthdays? Happy birthday! It's coming up. Oh, I do have to do a little plug. The Arts Festival, it starts next Tuesday, and I am the co-chair, and I will be there from start to finish every single day. So please, please come and see me, because
We will. And you know, she's been there. I will put a plug in for Betsy because she's been there every week for the last
5 weeks. Well, actually, the chairman's husband is taking care of the guys. That's pretty good. But anyway, I'd love to see you. Come on out. Come eat with me, because I'll be having every meal in the food court. Probably in the headquarters area or at one of the wine tents. And Corey will be at the wine tent too. So anyway, thank you all. Anything else?
If anyone would like to volunteer to be an artist for it on Sunday, I have shifts on Sunday the 26th.
Yeah, I've got to thank Gigi
And
for
it is the most
being one of my volunteers.
And it is the most fun job, I think, ever, because all you have to do is walk around and offer the artist cool drinks, make them comfortable, show your open hospitality, booth sit, their booth, if that, you know, kind of right. But we don't sell their artwork, so we just smile and point out how beautiful it is, take care of their booth, make sure nothing walks off. And it's a lot of fun. We'll see all you there. You can come help from 10:45 to 2, 3, 3, or 3 to 6:15. You know where to find me.
Everybody knows everybody's email address. Anyway, thank you very much. The next meeting is May 21st. The applications have already come in, so any applications for next month?
You do have applications.
Anything big?
That's all I'll say.
That's-
Well, and no, I'm not trying.
She's
I'm
not
trying to be-
revealing
I'm
anything.
not trying to be mysterious. Just that's all assuming that they're prepared to go. But the Fairfield Inn.
Oh, you are? Chuck is going to make a courtesy presentation.
Oh. Yeah, for.
Oh, on that one.
For.
That was in the news. Okura? Okay. Good to know. Really? Okay. Anyway, thank you, guys. We are adjourned. Sorry.